The college entrance exam results were just released. I was being interviewed as the top scorer. The conversation was going well, but after a sudden bout of dizziness, I found myself back in the examination hall. By reflex, I started flipping through the scratch paper on the desk, and the answer sheet. I hadn't noticed how strangely familiar this classroom looked. Just then, a voice announced, "Welcome to the Day 7 instance. Number of players, 30. Clear condition, players must give their all to pass the Gaokao. Note, follow the rules. We wish all players an enjoyable game." A pot-bellied man stood up abruptly. "Damn it. I've been out of school for how long? Don't mess with me." The next second, the man's head was severed from his body, as if sliced by an invisible steel wire. His voice stopped instantly as his head fell. Fear spread through the room in an instant. The system announcement echoed in everyone's minds. Remaining players, 28. The proctor stood on the podium, a twisted, eerie smile hanging on his lips. The crowd below became as silent as the grave. My fingers gripped the examinee rules in my hand. There, in black and white, it read, "Attention all examinees. The examination has officially begun. Attention all examinees." I realized I had entered a place where one wrong step could cost me my life. I told myself, stay alive. The classroom was deathly silent. For most people, the Gaokao was a distant memory. Even if they wanted to write, they didn't know where to start. Most hadn't even reacted yet. They didn't dare move or speak. Just then, the proctor moved. He slowly walked to the first row, looking at the first student with that smile. "Why aren't you writing?" The cold smile felt like it carried physical weight. The boy said, trembling, I haven't decided what to write yet." The moment he finished speaking, the boy became like erased data, slowly dissolving into blue motes of light, vanishing from the classroom. Everyone was so terrified they choked back their gasps. Everyone began to pick up their pens with shaking hands, scribbling blindly regardless of the consequences. The proctor continued to the second row. The girl in the second row was shaking like a leaf, scribbling nonsense on the paper. The proctor stopped beside her. A few seconds later, the girl shook so hard she couldn't write anymore, and she couldn't help but sob. The second she started crying, she too dissolved into blue motes of light, and vanished from the classroom. At that moment, I was reviewing the questions. This was a comprehensive exam paper. It seemed there would be only one test. Classical Chinese reading, set theory operations, conservation of kinetic energy, balancing chemical equations. Simple. My eyes lit up. These are all free points. I answered with such focus that I didn't even notice. The proctor had been standing beside me for a long time. "Not bad," the cold proctor dropped those words, and continued walking toward the back. I survived. I was the first person so far to survive a direct encounter with the proctor. The proctor kept patrolling the classroom, while I was busy writing at my desk. A small paper ball hit me right in the middle of the forehead. I looked up. 3 people nearby were all staring at me, like people in a desert seeing an oasis. Their mouths didn't move, but voices pleading for help echoed. Inside my head, it was likely some kind of supernatural item. I remembered when we first arrived in this instance. I had quickly observed their reactions. They were calm. They only started to panic after the first student died. Specifically after seeing the exam paper. They are veteran players. I realized this, and quietly moved my exam paper outward to make it visible to them. The exam time ticked away, minute by minute. By the time the exam was nearly over, only 20 people remained in the room. Then the broadcast rang out. 5 minutes remaining in the exam. Examinees, please prepare to submit your papers at your seats. Everyone had learned their lesson by now. They all put down their pens early as required by the rules. The proctor began collecting the papers. Everything seemed to be going naturally, but something was wrong. The proctor finished collecting the last paper, and stood back at the front. Theoretically, once the Gaokao is over, we should have cleared the level. But the next second, rain began to pour outside, accompanied by rolling thunder. A scream came from downstairs. Someone had jumped off the building. I instantly understood that the Gaokao couldn't be passed this way. We weren't going to clear the instance. A human blink takes 0.2 seconds. In a blink, the world seemed to have been paused. The classroom returned to its original, tidy state. A boy with glasses in the front row stood up, trembling. "It's finally over. I want to go home." He ran toward the door, shaking. The next second, he dissolved into a spray of light. The system announcement spoke again. "Remaining players, 19. The brief sense of relief in the room froze instantly. The proctor took the exam papers out of a sealed bag. He casually tossed the papers into the air, and they fluttered down, landing on every student's desk. The school broadcast rang out at that moment. "Attention all examinees. The examination has officially begun." No one picked up a pen. The classroom was as quiet as a deep mountain at midnight. Someone turned around, trembling, only to find the classroom clock pointing to 8 o'clock once again. Time seemed to have fallen into a loop. The air in the room felt stagnant. Everyone was wondering why we hadn't cleared the level. Others might have wondered if their scores weren't high enough to pass. But I knew. The key to this exam wasn't the score. Because I was 100% sure that I had a perfect score. Time passed slowly in this bizarre and silent atmosphere. Fear and anxiety spread through the crowd. I stared at the paper but didn't start writing. Just then, from the front row, a man holding a gem item rushed forward. Listen up. We can't solve these stupid questions. There must be another way to clear this instance. This proctor must be the boss. If we kill him together, we can clear the game. Several men had already surrounded the proctor. The youngest one held up a heavy hammer item. Just as the hammer was swung toward the proctor's head, in that instant, the proctor simply extended a single finger and blocked the blow from the strong man. Then, he raised his other hand. With a flash of electricity, he instantly pierced through one man's torso. In the end, only the first man remained alive. He hadn't actually attacked the proctor. The classroom was dead silent. The exam couldn't be cleared normally, and violence wasn't the solution. Half of the original 30 players were now dead. The instance seemed to have reached a dead end. The next second, I stood up. A shadow flickered past my peripheral vision. I think I figured out how to clear this. Little girl, calm down. You can't beat him. Let's think of another way. The blonde guy who asked me for help earlier, and a bald man both warned me. The man who had just gotten several people killed, spoke to me with disdain. Humph, Jiao Si. Do you think a newbie like you can play the hero? I ignored them, and looked steadily at the proctor. I tried my best to act like a normal examinee, and addressed him, Teacher, I need to use the restroom. The proctor just stared at me. Everyone in the room was looking at me, as if looking at a corpse. After a moment, the proctor nodded. Everyone was dumbfounded. I simply walked out of the classroom silently. Wait, what? She just went out like that? I thought about it and walked back into the classroom, holding up the exam paper just handed out. I told them this paper couldn't be used. There were already names on the papers. On the edges of everyone's papers, 0 values had been written in, and the rules said, you can only answer using your own identity. The clear condition is passing the Gaokao. But passing isn't what it seems. The score is not the point. Finding clues about the boss during the exam is the real goal. The proctor isn't the boss. Lin Ji probably is. We need to find this person. He's most likely the one who jumps when the time ends. He's on the rooftop right now. The crowd began to whisper because of my words. These are just my theories. Believe them or not, it's up to you. I looked at the proctor, my gaze like a torch, and said loudly, I will definitely survive. I had realized long ago that this instance is actually my high school. But as for the name Lin Ji, it couldn't be that person, could it? I decided to go to the rooftop to find him, not noticing a shadow quietly following me. By the time I realized it, it was too late. I ran as hard as I could, but the monster still caught up to me. After many twists and turns, I was saved by the bald man's group. Looking at the monster's sticky saliva on my body, I almost wished I had died. The bald man and his group briefly updated me on the situation, and told me there were 2 ways to clear the level. The first is by force. Find the boss and kill them directly. The second is to gain the boss's recognition. A peaceful clear. Before they saved me, another group had already gone to the rooftop. But the rooftop door was locked, and it couldn't be forced open. So they went to the security room to get the key. There was 1 hour left until the exam ended. We hurried to the security room. Old man, lend us the rooftop key for a bit. Someone tried to snatch it by force. The old man waved his hand, and that person was sent flying by a bolt of lightning. The rest didn't dare step forward. But the old man looked more and more familiar to me. Uncle Chen. During my senior year, my mom often came to school to bring me extra food for nutrition. I got quite close with Uncle Chen. I'd even bring him a bottle of cold water when I had time. He was very kind to me too. Sometimes when I couldn't make it down for my food, he'd find someone heading my way to bring it to me. I didn't expect to see a familiar face in the instance. Yao Yao, your grades were so good back then. You were the valedictorian material of our school. It's a pity that thing happened later. Since entering the instance, this was the first time I felt truly confused. Uncle Chen sounded like he was talking about someone else, yet he clearly knew me. The surrounding players looked at me with increased suspicion. Someone questioned me. Who exactly are you? Why does an instance NPC know you? My mind was a mess. Everything here was so familiar. So why did the me in Uncle Chen's story sound like a completely different person? Perhaps, only the boss of this instance can give me the answer. Regardless, I have to survive first. I played along with Uncle Chen's words. Uncle, the dean asked me to open the rooftop door. It's urgent. Can you give me the key first? The old man looked at me happily. Take it. Just remember to bring it back down to me. I took the key, and casually mentioned, Uncle, have you seen Lin Ji? The old man's face changed instantly. Why bring up someone like him? He's the shame of our number 3 high school. According to the old man's description, Lin Ji seemed to be a famous person in our school. I nodded, feeling even more strange in my heart. If he was so famous, how could I have no memory of him at all? 30 minutes left until the exam ended. We headed toward the rooftop. Unexpectedly, halfway there, we were ambushed by one of our own. It was that veteran player, who had caused so many deaths in the classroom. The sword was only an inch from my face. When the bald man blocked it, I was scared half to death. Chen Xing, what are you doing? The bald man yelled angrily. Don't say I didn't warn you about this girl. She's the boss of this instance. If we kill her, we can clear the game. The bald man was stunned for a second, then cursed, have you lost your damn mind? If she's the boss, why would she give us clues? With a heavy punch from the bald man, an all-out fight broke out. I simply pulled open a window in the corridor and shouted outside. Director! Someone's fighting! Director, come quick! Everyone stopped immediately. Then a tall, massive shadow appeared instantly. A deep, booming voice asked. Who's fighting? Do you not want to graduate? I knew our high school's dean hated students fighting more than anything. In this instance world, Chen Xing and his crew were going to have a hard time. Hello, Director. I'm Ji Yao from Class 3, Grade 12. These people suddenly rushed out and attacked my classmate. The director's face darkened instantly. With one punch, he seriously injured Chen Xing. Chen Xing's face went pale with pain. He looked at me with resentment. But under the director's intimidation, he didn't dare say another word. Using my wits, I had successfully resolved the crisis. I inserted the key and opened the rusty iron door. A boy in white was standing at the edge of the rooftop. He turned and saw me. He seemed to have something to say, but then he turned his head away again. I saw his face clearly. It felt like a punch to the gut. I froze in place. It really is you, the eternal runner-up. It really was the Lin Ji I knew. He moved his mouth, but I couldn't hear what he said. The Lin Ji my parents brought home during sophomore year, calling him their lifesaver. The Lin Ji who was always a few points behind me. The perpetual second place. The Lin Ji who was always gentle with me, who would agree to anything unconditionally. Compared to my shock, Lin Ji seemed much more composed. I didn't expect to see someone I know in this instance. The blonde guy whispered to the bald man. Brother Peng, it looks like they know each other. I snapped out of my daze and thought for 2 seconds. In a flash, another possibility occurred to me. I walked toward the boy in white. His gaze was wary, but he didn't move. I probed. Who are you waiting for? Lin Ji, the boy in white, reacted like his tail had been stepped on. What does it have to do with you? Are you here to mock me too? Let me tell you. I never did those shady, colluding things. You will all regret it soon. Hearing his words, I frowned. Time was extremely limited. After a few more words, we hurried back to the exam room. The moment the door opened, all the examinees' eyes were on us. It's one thing for one person to seek death, but a whole bunch of idiots followed her. Noticing the injuries on our bodies, one boy pointed at us and mocked. 10 minutes left until the exam ended. Sister, you picked up her exam paper and looked at me. I gave a barely perceptible nod. Before entering the classroom, Sister, you had told me she had already answered part of her paper. Would there be a problem? The next second, the proctor appeared instantly. But before he could speak, he saw Sister Yu quickly tear the exam paper into a pile of scrap paper. Teacher, my answer sheet is ruined. Please give me a new one. The proctor hesitated for a moment, then produced a new paper out of thin air and dropped it onto Sister Yu's desk. Sister Yu let out a long sigh of relief and gave me a grateful look. 8 minutes left until the exam ended. The sound of papers being torn echoed in unison. Teacher, my answer sheet is ruined too. Teacher, me too. The proctor kept handing out new answer sheets. 3 seconds left in the exam. The boy who had mocked us said hurriedly, Teacher, I need to change my answer sheet too. The proctor walked over, but remained motionless. At the final second, the proctor slammed the answer sheet onto his desk. A girl's high-pitched voice came over the broadcast. Exam ends. The third loop began. Before that girl could even react, she vanished into data fragments in terror. Including that girl, 5 more people disappeared. They had all answered questions. Only 10 players remained. They all looked at me with tacit understanding, their eyes filled with awe. Invisible comments were flying. This time, no one stayed in the classroom. The notice for examinees to start the exam rang out. Begin. Almost everyone stood up. Chen Xing gave us a vicious look and walked out, dragging his injured arm. He went to the security room for the key. The bald man's group came over to me, but I led them to the archives instead, because I knew that even with the key to find Lin Ji, we couldn't clear it. I had to solve the mystery surrounding Lin Ji. The bald man was skilled at taking out small mobs on the way. He cleared them easily. Then we split up to search for Lin Ji's file. The archives were pitch black, making the search very difficult. I focused on rummaging through file after file, and finally found what I was looking for. Ji Yao's relatives. The word orphan stung my eyes. 20 minutes left until the exam ended. The bald man gave a cheer and handed Lin Ji's file to me. I glanced at my watch. Back to the classroom first. I walked out while opening the file, but I noticed that the further we got from the archives, the fainter the writing on Lin Ji's file became. The photo was already too blurry to see. I stopped immediately to browse it quickly. After reading the file, I finally understood. No time to explain. I started running. The archives were on the first floor, the exam hall was on the fifth, only 5 minutes left until the first broadcast. I was already out of breath after just a few steps. The bald man, who was in the lead, suddenly stopped. He turned back, hoisted me onto his back, and before I could react, he was running at the front of the pack with me. I clutched my chest, feeling my lungs were about to burst, and took a shaky breath. We flew up the stairs. 14 minutes until the absolute end. 4 minutes until the first broadcast. I didn't know which standard the rules would use to judge us. An ominous sense of tension filled my heart. Looking up, the stairs seemed endless. At the landing between the stairs and the corridor, Chen Xing was standing there. He sneered and said, "I told you she was the boss. If you won't believe me, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Give him a taste of this." He slammed the black ball in his hand onto the ground. In an instant, it transformed into a massive, shadow monster. The bald man paused and slowly crouched down, setting me on the ground. Only 3 minutes and 28 seconds left until the first broadcast. Looking at the giant monster, I was frozen with fear. If we didn't deal with this monster quickly, we might all die in this loop. Chen Xing ran away. The monster moved. It didn't walk, but slid down, flowing down the steps like a shadow of blood. Its speed was terrifyingly fast. The monster was too strong as it drifted past. The bald man was sent flying, crashing into a corner. Plaster crumbled and fell rapidly. At that moment, the dilapidated school broadcast crackled. 10 minutes left in the exam. Examinees, please prepare to submit your papers at your seats. My heart sank. The black shadow swept down instantly. Below the stairs, another group of black shadows surged forward. Sister Yu took out her long whip and clashed with the charging shadows. But these monsters were endless, as if they could never be fully killed. On the other side, Yellow Hair and the bald man escaped the monster's pursuit, their bodies covered in wounds. Sister Yu and I hurried over to regroup with them. I helped the bald man up and told them there wasn't enough time to get back to the classroom. We could only head back to the archives now. Maybe I had a way to clear the game. So, our group rushed back to the archives again. I explained to them as we ran. The instance was formed by the resentment of a wronged person. Lin Ji must have been framed. To get his recognition, we must clear his name. We have to prove it for him. Walking into the archives, I immediately turned on the computer and composed an email. With only 10 seconds of exam time left, I clicked send. In truth, I wasn't sure if my guess was correct. There was too little valid information at the moment. This world was slightly different from mine. I was an orphan here, and Lin Ji was the top student in the whole school. He was a star student the school had high hopes for. The bulletin boards used to be full of his commendations, but for some reason, they had all been torn down, leaving only the tattered corners behind. I had planned to meet him on the rooftop in the next loop, to ensure my guess was foolproof. But time was of the essence. I didn't have the chance. Fortunately, seconds later, 2 announcements rang out. Congratulations to players Ji Yao, Peng Han, Lin Zixiao, and Xin Xiao for fulfilling the long-cherished wish. Instance cleared. Reward obtained. Unfinished wish. Congratulations to players Chen Xing, Zhao, Qian, Sun, Li, Zhou, and Wu for slaying the boss. Instance cleared. Reward obtained. 5 years of Gaokao, 3 years of mock exams. After the broadcast ended, we were teleported back to the classroom. Chen Xing was cursing the system rewards with several others. I noticed something was wrong. The system announcement. Why was it over the broadcast? The previous system announcements clearly echoed directly in our minds. Something suddenly occurred to me. A second before the instance dissipated, everyone looked at me, saying goodbye with reluctance in their eyes, as if to put a perfect end to this brief encounter. I turned to look at the bald man's group, extended my hand, and made a palm-opening gesture. The next second, the instance dissipated. When I opened my eyes again, I was looking at the ceiling of my bedroom. There was something on the floor. I picked it up to take a look. It was the complete chain of evidence of Lin Ji being framed for leaking the exam. There were also various photos. Lin Ji was falsely accused of stealing questions. He wanted to discuss it with the principal, not knowing that the principal was the mastermind, who then pushed him off the school building. I held the documents in silence. I carefully reviewed every single detail, then typed the first line on social media. The truth about Lin Ji's theft and suicide case. Within a few days, this matter became the talk of the town. The truth had finally come out. Lin Ji's tombstone was surrounded by people who came to mourn, almost buried under flowers. I stood quietly in the distance. It wasn't until night fell that I carried a bouquet of sunflowers and walked slowly to Lin Ji's grave. In the photo on the tombstone, he was still wearing a white shirt, with a face that was extremely familiar to me. After a moment of silence, a figure emerged from the shadows and walked up to me. It was Lin Ji. He didn't look surprised. You guessed it. He opened a can of beer and handed it to me. He opened another one for himself, raised it, and clinked it against mine. Cheers. Neither of us spoke for a while. Yes, I had guessed it. This real world was fake. It was an illusion within the instance. Anyone who didn't sincerely try to clear his name was equivalent to his accusers. They would all die here. That's why this instance was called the seventh day. Because this illusion was the final test. Just past midnight, everyone was instantly back in the classroom. Surprise flashed in the eyes of the bald man's group. But they quickly understood the situation. They nodded at me. The others weren't so calm. Chen Xing, true to being a veteran player, looked around, but found that we were all unmoved. He couldn't help but stand up to steady himself. He raised his hand and rushed toward me, as if he wanted to do something to me. I couldn't even be bothered to explain. The next second, the advancing Chen Xing suddenly exploded, his body bursting like fireworks. Everyone was petrified. At this moment, they seemed to remember that there was still a sinister proctor in the classroom. The proctor stood tall and made a gun gesture with one hand, about to decide the next person's fate. The remaining people weren't idiots. After calming down, they gradually figured out the reason. The girl clutched her head in disbelief, tears blurring her face. She looked around in a daze, finally fixing her gaze on me. Ji Yao, save me. But the proctor's finger was slowly pointing at her. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. Lin Ji, wearing his white shirt, pushed the door open and walked in. Everyone froze at first. Then, overcome by fear, they all rushed toward Lin Ji. Kill him and we can clear the game. Let's kill him together, Chen Xing said. He was weak and could be taken down single-handedly. Lin Ji stood his ground, his expression devoid of emotion. He slowly raised his hand and snapped his fingers. As the sound faded, it seemed everyone was bound by an invisible force, frozen in place. A blue light flashed on Lin Ji's body, and everyone who attacked him turned into data fragments. The whole process took less than 5 seconds. Silence returned to the classroom. The final exam was over. We turned in our blank papers. The system announcement this time rang out in my mind. Congratulations to players Ji Yao, Peng Han, Lin Zixiao, and Xin Xiao for clearing the game and obtaining rewards. Unfinished wish. We hope you enjoyed the game. We'll see you next time. The instance ended. I said goodbye to my remaining friends. Their figures grew more distant, and their voices grew fainter. I shouted at the top of my lungs, let's clear the next game together. Don't you dare die. Only silence answered me. The instance was broken, but I didn't return to the real world. It was as if I had entered a space within the virtual world. Even the air was unreally quiet. Lin Ji walked over through the void. He still looked like a bright young boy, with a faint smile in his eyes. You're so calm. Aren't you afraid you won't be able to go back? I still have the unfinished wish reward. Lin Ji's pupils dilated suddenly, his voice urgent. Ji Yao, are you crazy? The system was still broadcasting. SSS rank reward, unfinished wish. Does player Ji Yao confirm the transfer? Transfer successful. You shouldn't have been so good to me. I smiled and said to him, don't stay trapped in that summer. Lin Ji flashed with light. My body was being teleported out. Before I could finish my sentence, the instance world vanished. Goodbye, Lin Ji. The next second, I looked at the world around me in a daze. I was back. Lin Ji was by the roadside, looking at me with a slightly worried expression. Not far away, my parents were waiting, their expressions full of love. I walked toward him. Ji Yao, congratulations. I hope the Gaokao went well. He patted my head, his usual clear and gentle self, a world away from the gloomy boy in the instance. I asked impatiently, did you get your revenge later? He nodded slightly. He took out a prepared bouquet of sunflowers from behind him and handed it to me. I took the flowers and said, you didn't waste my wish. The sunflowers bloomed thick and vibrant. Truly the perfect flowers for graduation, just like usual. I skipped along beside him. I said happily, the way you blew those people's heads off was so cool. Doesn't it feel a bit bad not being the boss anymore? You can't just take out whoever you don't like. Thank you, Lin Ji. He was surprised for a moment, then quickly returned to his usual gentleness. I'm the one who should thank you. Ji Yao. Despite all the hardships, at least you weren't trapped in that summer. We stood in the sunflower field and smiled at each other. Our story is still very long, and there are so many things I can slowly tell you. I am Ji Yao. The Gaokao is over, but our story hasn't ended yet. Lin Ji and I successfully got into the same university. After a leisurely vacation, university life arrived as scheduled. We often went to the library to study together. We discussed everything that had happened, and in this ordinary daily life, we felt incredibly happy. Sometimes I feel the world is so wonderful. We both had unfortunate lives, yet we were saved by each other. Perhaps this is the best arrangement. In the blink of an eye, our quiet university life was coming to an end. At the graduation ceremony, Lin Ji put a flower in my hair. He proposed to me, with our classmates as witnesses. I accepted his proposal. The wedding was set for a month later. A month later, our wedding was held in a field of blooming sunflowers. We held each other and kissed. This is where my story with Lin Ji ends. My name is Lin Ji. I was once framed and pushed off a building. And I once controlled everything in a supernatural instance. Until I met you. Ji Yao, you cleared my name. And you helped me escape the instance. After escaping, I went back to 2 years ago. So, I successfully helped Ji Yao's parents avoid that fatal car accident. She was able to grow up with both her parents. I also had the honor of being part of her life. It turns out she is so cheerful and lively, with a unique charm. It seems all the sunshine in the world is poured onto her alone. Thank you. For the rest of our lives, please look after me.